My sister blocked me from the reunion table and said, "Immediate family only." "You're not family. You're just the extra." Relatives stared and whispered. I answered quietly, "Then you might want to hear what your father wrote. My name is Danielle Brooks. I'm 36 years old. I work as a mid-level public library manager in a small town where nobody really notices you unless you do something wrong. My salary is modest. My car is old. My apartment is clean, but nothing anyone would photograph. And in a family full of loud personalities and flashy lifestyles, I've always been the one people look past. My mom married my sister's father when I was 7. From the very first holiday dinner, I was treated like something temporary, like a guest who overstayed. My sister, Vanessa, was the one they praised. She got the best seat, the biggest gifts, the longest hugs. I got polite nods. I was the dependable one, though. I drove relatives to appointments. I ran errands nobody wanted to do. I sat in hospital waiting rooms for hours when my stepfather got sick, but none of that earned me a title. I spent years trying to earn belonging instead of demanding respect. That was my mistake, and I knew it. My dream was simple. I wanted to build a peaceful, chosen family someday and stop begging for approval from people who would never give it freely. I'm not loud. I'm not glamorous. I'm not rich, but I'm observant, and I'm patient. I wasn't impressive on the outside, but I paid attention when others didn't. My stepfather and I had a quiet bond. We talked in his study. We shared silence comfortably. Nobody took it seriously. They thought he tolerated me. The reunion was supposed to be closure, a final gathering after his passing. Instead, it became the day my own family rejected me in public. If you grew up feeling like the outsider in your own home, this story is for you. Have you ever been treated like you didn't belong at your own table? If that hits close, you're not alone. Subscribe so you don't miss stories like this. Drop a comment with your experience, and click hype to help others find this one. The reunion was held at a rented hall on the edge of town. Someone had hung a blue and white banner that read "Brooks Family Forever." There were catered trays of food lined up on long tables, a speaker system for toasts, and printed programs with a schedule of speeches and photo sessions. The smell of barbecue and fresh rolls filled the room. I walked in carrying a homemade peach cobbler, my stepfather's favorite recipe. Vanessa saw me and laughed immediately. "We already ordered real food, Danielle. You didn't need to bring that." I set it on the edge of the buffet and tried not to react. Then I saw the seating chart pinned to a board near the entrance. Every name in the family was listed: aunts, uncles, cousins, spouses, even children. My name was not there. I read it twice to make sure. Vanessa walked over with her arms crossed. "You're not technically family," she said, loud enough for everyone within 10 feet to hear. "Let's not pretend today." And Uncle chuckled. "She's more like a long-term guest, right?" He nudged the man next to him, and they both smirked. I grabbed my purse and turned toward the door. I was going to leave quietly, but a man near the exit stopped me. He was older, wearing a gray suit. I recognized him as Gerald, my stepfather's closest friend from church. "Don't leave just yet," he said softly. "The family lawyer is coming later today. You'll want to be here." Vanessa must have overheard, because she appeared behind me in seconds. "There's nothing in any will for you," she snapped. "Relax." A few cousins glanced over. One of the in-laws whispered something behind a napkin. Vanessa turned to the buffet and picked up my cobbler dish. She moved it to a side counter, away from the main table. "This isn't part of the menu," she said flatly. I stood there holding nothing, saying nothing. Then a voice crackled over the microphone. It was Vanessa's husband. He announced that the family lawyer had been slightly delayed, but that a formal will reading had been scheduled for today, per the deceased's written instruction. The room buzzed. Vanessa's face went pale for just a second. Then she forced a smile and clapped her hands. "Great, let's get it over with." The group photo was called about 30 minutes later. Everyone gathered near the banner. I started walking toward the group when Vanessa held up her hand. "Immediate blood family only for this one," she said. The photographer, a young woman with a ponytail, looked at me and then back at Vanessa. She hesitated, but followed the instruction. I stepped aside. I stood near the dessert table and watched my family pose without me. The camera clicked. They smiled. I didn't exist in that frame. Then came the toasts. Vanessa took the microphone with the confidence of someone who had rehearsed. She thanked everyone for coming. She talked about her father's legacy, and then she said it. I want to thank the real family who carried Dad's legacy forward. The ones who share his blood and his name, not charity cases, not add-ons, real family. She raised her glass. The room clapped, though some people shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. I felt the words land in my chest like stones dropped into still water. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just breathed. After the toast, a cousin named Brenda approached me with a leather-bound book and a pen. We're putting together a memory book, she said sweetly. Just sign this release so we can include the family stories. I looked at the form. It wasn't a memory book release. The language was legal. It mentioned intellectual property, publishing rights, and commercial use. Vanessa was planning to sell a memoir, and she wanted me to sign away any claim to the stories I had lived through. I'm not signing this, I said. Brenda blinked. You're being selfish, Danielle. It's just a formality. Then you won't mind if I don't. I handed the book back. She walked away, shaking her head. I stayed calm, but inside, I was cataloging everything. The things people said, the things they assumed, the details that didn't add up about what they claimed my stepfather owned and what I knew to be true. I remembered our quiet conversations in the library, the way he asked me questions nobody else cared to answer. Vanessa walked past me and whispered, I already know what the will says. You're wasting your time. The lawyer was supposed to arrive at 4. It was 3:45. I didn't respond to Vanessa. I just sat down, because months ago, something had arrived in my mailbox, a sealed envelope. I never told anyone. My stepfather used to visit me at the library every Thursday, not to borrow books, just to sit with me during my lunch break and talk. He didn't ask about promotions or accomplishments. He asked about my favorite authors, about what I was reading, about whether I was sleeping well. Once, while we were sitting on the bench outside the back entrance, he said something I never forgot. The one who listens learns where the truth is buried. I didn't fully understand it then, but I remembered it. Over the last 2 years of his life, he asked me to help him organize old documents, letters, property deeds, insurance records, and personal journals. We spent dozens of afternoons scanning and digitizing everything onto a secure drive. I didn't think much of it at the time. It felt like a project, not a secret. But there was one afternoon that stood out. He asked me to sign a document as a witness. He told me not to mention it to anyone. They'll measure love by money, he said, looking at me over his reading glasses. Don't give them a reason to start counting before I'm gone. I kept copies of everything stored safely in a locked drawer at my apartment. I never mentioned them, not once. I noticed that Vanessa never visited him unless she needed a check signed or a favor granted. The reunion wasn't the first surprise he had planned. It was just the loudest one. The lawyer arrived at exactly 4:15. His name was Arthur Bellingham. He was in his late 60s, dressed in a navy suit with a worn leather briefcase. He walked into the hall slowly, scanning the room like he already knew every person and every lie in it. Then he did something nobody expected. He walked directly to me. Danielle, he said warmly, extending his hand. It's good to see you again. The room went quiet. Vanessa's smile froze. A cousin whispered. Again? Vanessa rushed forward. Mr. Bellingham, we appreciate you coming. Let's get this handled quickly so we can get back to celebrating. He looked at her without expression. The will must be read exactly as your father wrote it, in full, today, with witnesses present. That was his condition. She opened her mouth to argue, but stopped. He turned to the room and said firmly, I'll need everyone to take a seat, and please put your phones down. This is a legal proceeding. Before sitting down, Arthur pulled me gently to the side near the hallway. He spoke quietly. Did you receive the sealed letter I mailed in January? I nodded. Good, he said. Hold on to it. Back in the main room, family members settled into chairs. Vanessa leaned over to a cousin and said loudly enough for me to hear, I wonder what little souvenir Danielle's getting. Maybe a bookmark. They laughed. Another relative guessed I might receive a token amount, maybe $500. Arthur opened his briefcase and placed a folder on the table. He looked up at the room. Before we begin, I want to make clear that Mr. Brooks updated this will within the last 14 months of his life. The amendments are legally binding and witnessed. Vanessa's laughter stopped. Everyone remained seated, Arthur said. This will take longer than you think. Vanessa leaned back in her chair and crossed her legs. This won't take long, she said. I kept my eyes on the table, because I knew it would. Arthur Bellingham opened the folder and placed his glasses on his nose. The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioner and the faint ticking of a clock on the far wall. He began reading the personal statements first, as the will instructed. The opening paragraph was about family. The second was about loyalty. The third mentioned me by name. To Danielle Brooks, Arthur read aloud, who spent her Thursdays with me, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Who never asked me for money. Who never treated me like an opportunity. Who treated me like a person, not a resource. I leave the following with full clarity and full intention. Vanessa stood up. This is ridiculous. She's not even his real daughter. Arthur looked at her over his glasses. Miss Brooks, I will ask you once to remain silent. If you interrupt again, I will pause this reading and complete it in a private legal office without your presence. She sat down slowly, her face red. Arthur continued. To Danielle Brooks, I leave the fully paid-off lakeside property at 412 Crescent Shore Drive, along with full literary rights to my personal journals, letters and unpublished writings. The room erupted. Vanessa's husband stood up. A cousin slammed her hand on the table. Voices overlapped. Arthur raised his hand and waited for silence. He then presented the signed amendment and the witness record. My signature was on it, the same document I had signed 2 years ago in the library parking lot. Vanessa pointed at me. She manipulated him. He was old and confused, and she took advantage. Arthur reached into his briefcase and pulled out a laptop. Your father anticipated this reaction, he said calmly. He opened a video file. My stepfather appeared on the screen, sitting in his study, looking directly into the camera. Danielle, he said in the recording, if they're watching this, it means they're angry. That's fine. I want them to know I made this choice with a clear mind and a full heart. You showed up. That mattered more than anything. Vanessa's voice cracked. You manipulated him. I looked at her and said, I showed up. That's all. Arthur then read an additional clause. It stated that any beneficiary who publicly disrespected or excluded a family member in connection with the estate would have their inheritance reduced by 40%. Vanessa's reunion speech, the one where she called me a charity case, had been recorded on the event videographer's camera. Arthur confirmed the clause was legally enforceable. The room was dead silent. Every eye shifted from Vanessa to me. The power in that room flipped completely, and I hadn't raised my voice once. The minutes after the reading were strange. Relatives, who hadn't spoken to me in years, suddenly appeared at my side. An aunt offered to help me move into the lake house. A cousin said we should catch up soon. Vanessa's husband tried to shake my hand. I declined every invitation. I turned down every fake apology. I didn't need their warmth now that it came with a price tag. I kept the lake house, but I didn't keep it for myself. I started planning to turn it into a reading retreat program for young people who love books but don't have a quiet place to enjoy them. Vanessa sent messages over the following weeks. I didn't open them. Arthur handed me one final envelope before I left the hall that day. Inside was a handwritten letter from my stepfather. The last line read, Build your own table, Danielle. You've earned it. I folded the letter and put it in my coat pocket. Belonging isn't something granted by loud people at crowded tables. It's proven by quiet truth, steady presence, and showing up when it's not convenient. I walked out of that reunion hall before the event even ended. My steps were calm and steady. Sometimes the one they push out becomes the one who holds the keys. If you've ever been told you're not real family, if you've been pushed out of photos and left off seating charts and treated like you don't matter, I want you to know something. You do matter. And the people who exclude you don't get to define you. Drop a comment and tell me about a time someone tried to erase you from your own story. Subscribe so you're here when the next story drops. And click hype to help this one reach someone who needs to hear it today. If this story hit home, leave a like. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your experiences in the comments. Press hype to help boost this story so it can travel further and reach the people who need it most. Your support is what makes these stories possible. And every share, every comment, every click helps someone else feel less alone.